it the start of con season already? Aaron Nabus here, and thank you so much for tuning into the Hall H Show. On this episode, my co-hosts, Benedicto and Jason Lethert, and I are joined by the world's youngest comic book historian and newly appointed chairman of San Diego Comic Fest, Matt Dunford. We hope this will be the first of many podcasts with him because he definitely brought the thunder in our Thunder Round, even getting into character by getting white and nerdy as Weird Al Yankovic. If you're in San Diego from February 17th to February 20th, please check out San Diego Comic Fest. And now on to the show. Artists assemble. Hey there, fellow nerds and geeks. Aaron Nabus here, and welcome to the Hall H Show. The start of the convention season is upon us, and I can't think of a better one to kick it off with than San Diego Comic Fest, a 4-day event that will take place from Friday, February 17th to Monday, February 20th, which is President's Day weekend. How lucky for us that our special guest today is the newly appointed chairman of San Diego Comic Fest, Matt Dunford. Welcome to the Hall H Show, Matt.
Hey, Aaron. Thank you for having me on. I'm really happy to be here today with you guys. Thank you so much for having me. We are here today at the lovely San Diego Comic Art Gallery, basking in the glow of nearly 20 Eisner Awards, Harvey Awards, and so many great comics material that they have produced over their great 18-year history here in San Diego. And I couldn't be happier to showcase San Diego comics in all its forms.
Sweet. And with myself and Matt, I am also joined by my co-host and HallH.com co-founder, Alex Benedicto, and writer, producer, filmmaker, and HallH.com contributor, Jason Lethert. What's up, guys?
Glad to be here, guys.
How's it going?
On this episode, we will put the spotlight on Matt Dunford and get to know him a little bit better. We'll learn what's new for this year's San Diego Comic Fest. We'll bring the thunder in our Thunder Round, our set of off-the-beaten-path questions. We'll flash forward a little bit and talk about the future of San Diego Comic Fest, and we'll also see what other projects Matt has going on. Then we'll end our conversation with Where in the World is Matt, and then a few closing remarks. All right, Alex, go ahead.
All right. In a recent comicsbeat.com article, you recount your first experiences as a kid with Legos and Spider-Man comics. Can you tell your audience a bit more about these experiences?
Okay, so pretty much like before I was able to read, you know, we all get fascinated by our favorite toys and whatnot. So my favorite toys back in the day were Lego Pirates. They were amazing. I loved them. Everyone had their Lego set, but for me, it was Captain Redbeard and the Lego Pirates. I just loved them. So, you know, one day my parents pretty much bought me anything Lego Pirates, and I just became obsessed with them. And they bought me a set that had this comic book in the back called Captain Redbeard and the Golden Medallion, and I couldn't read it, so I had to have my parents read it for me, and I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. I remember there's this stark transition. It's like, I need to know what these people are saying in this comic because it is so cool. So I remember just like looking at these pages before, and then after a month or two, all of a sudden the words on them made sense. And because of this comic, I actually learned how to read, and just because that's pretty much what sent me off on a spark. And my dad realized, I responded really well to reading, and so maybe I can get a couple more or something else to help supplement his reading. So he takes me to Toys R Us, and of course the year was 1992, which was a certain Walt Crawler was celebrating his 30th anniversary. Then I turn and I see it as I'm walking through the toy aisle, this collection of 30 Spider-Man comics to celebrate his 30th anniversary. And if you were like me, a kid growing up in the early 90s, and you saw one of those holofoil covers, ain't no way saying no. You are not turning that down. And so that collection of Spider-Man comics was like the first comic material that I read, and I just felt absolutely in love with it. I would read those issues until pretty much they were falling apart. I just loved them to death, learning everything I could about Peter Parker and Mary Jane and everything at the time, and of course his nemesis Harry Osborn, and I just loved it. And so then from there I got into the X-Men cartoon and the Batman cartoon, and so I had this fascination with these superhero cartoons that were coming out in the early 1990s. And of course, my Spider-Man fandom went into overdrive in 1994 when I got exposed to the Spider-Man cartoon. And that pretty much just made me this gigantic fanboy. I was buying up every single toy, every trading card, and everything. Pretty much like, it was a great time to be a collector of stuff in the early 1990s. And that's where I got my start.
Sweet.
That brings back memories.
Yeah, it looks like your comic book fandom led to an interest in comic book history. Can you tell us how you became the world's youngest comic book historian?
How did I become the world's youngest comic book historian? So, really, I've been attending Comic-Con every year since 1994 was my first one. And, I was going to college at the time, going to UC Santa Barbara, and I was majoring in... double majoring in cultural anthropology and cultural geography, so I'm qualified to be unemployed in 2 academic disciplines. And I'm also a big Pokemon nerd, and so I swung down to a Pokemon Regional Championships in Los Angeles for that day. And after I finished up there, it was early 2009, and I decided, they're having a little event at Meltdown Comics, and they were interviewing Len Wein, who is, of course, the co-creator of Wolverine and Swamp Thing, and he was there speaking about his editorial work on Watchmen. And so I went to his lecture that he was doing in the back room and heard about him doing the editorial work for Watchmen, and I realized, that sounds like the coolest job ever. You get to work in comics, and you just get to tell them how to improve a story, how to improve the art, and you just have to be a know-it-all. And that's when I thought, maybe I should consider comics as a career path. And so pretty much the advice he gave me is just kind of learn up everything you can about comics. And so pretty much I expanded the reach and started reading comics I wasn't doing before, instead of just being the typical Marvel fanboy, dabbling in DC, dabbling in a Dark Horse, dabbling in Image, and just learning as much as I can. And just during that summer, I just started taking in a whole lot of information, and then not so much the stories, but just the creativity behind it, and I started getting all of that in there. And then I became turned on to comic history books, particularly by Mark Evanier, and he just talked about his work as in comic history. So I started from there in summer 2009, actually, pretty much attending any lecture that Evanier was on, learning every single little bit of it. And on the Sunday of that Comic-Con, he was doing the annual Jack Kirby tribute panel. That year at the Jack Kirby tribute panel, he had a founding father of Comic-Con there, a physics professor named Roger Friedman, who also mentioned that he was a professor at UC Santa Barbara. So I'm like, huh. So during his office hours, I would go to Dr. Friedman and just talk with him about the early years of Comic-Con. And he would tell me about how you were just these gang of teenagers that decided to put together a convention, hearing about the early years of San Diego Comic-Con and its formative times, and just them hanging out with all these legendary creators and just having an absolute blast. I just why couldn't I have been born in that time to make it to those conventions? And as the year went by, I'm finishing up school, and it's I'm knee-deep in finals week, haven't slept in 3 days, and I get an email from Professor Friedman. He has emailed me and Mark Evanier and Scott Shaw, and he says, listen, we have a student here. They've asked me to be on his PhD dissertation committee. He is graduating with a degree in superheroology. And I thought, I could have gone that. I could have studied that, but he asked me, could you guys come up with 10 questions for him, 10 essay questions that would really fit into the scheme of things and make sure that he understands the history of superheroes. So I take time off of my busy studies and I come up with these 10 questions, making sure it's explain to me how the superhero began. And so if you could answer correctly with the establishment of Superman #1 in Action Comics and in 1938, and just say, where did this golden age begin? Where did it end? Where would you say, what reflects the silver age of comics? What would you say is the transition period between the golden age and bronze age? And if you could figure that out. And so I come up with these questions, and everyone just thought they were pretty spot on. And of course, these guys had never really heard of me before, and they said, who the hell is Matt Dunford? And Roger said, he's Matt Dunford. He's the world's youngest comic book historian.
That's a cool story.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being a big comic book fan, so you also do cosplay. Most recently as the Flash. How long have you been doing it, and what motivated you to cosplay in the first place?
Cosplay is something I accidentally stumbled onto. And, I would go to conventions all the time, and I would just, see the costuming people all the time. It was never really something that really just interested me at all. But a number of years back, it was at the 2010 Long Beach Comic Con, and the weekend when it was happening was Halloween weekend, and all my friends were, planning costumes, and I said, well, it's the night before Halloween. Could I come up with something? So I came up with something, and I decided to just take a black suit, a purple shirt, a top hat, and a little red strap, and put a little skull and crossbones on it, and make myself my favorite Disney villain, Dr. Facilier from Princess and the Frog. And I attended the Long Beach Comic Con as Dr. Facilier, and people loved it. People absolutely loved this costume, much to my surprise. I could not believe it. And so I really enjoyed the reaction of my last-minute costume, but it just wasn't really something I touched for a while. But then people for years after that were egging me on, do another costume, do another costume, do another costume. And then finally I decided to team up with my friend Charlie, who does all these random costumes at the last minute. We're both big King of the Hill fans, and so I decided to attend that year's Long Beach Comic Con as Dale Gribble, and he dressed up as John Redcorn. And we went and we stole the show with these last-minute costumes, literally jeans, brown shirt, orange hat, and glasses, and that's all it took. And we just stole the show, and then next thing I know, I'm getting a call from John Redcorn's voice actor, who found me on Facebook and actually thought just to say how much he loved the costume, and it was just it was great. And then from there, because I was also working at Little Fish Comic Book Studio, there's an event that was going around town called Club Cosplay. Club Cosplay came to Little Fish to hand out some flyers, and they're hitting up all the geeky places in town. They hand me some free passes and said, if you want to come to Club Cosplay, we'd love to have you there. So the hot movie at the time was The Interview with James Franco, and I decided, the event is tomorrow. Let me think what I can do. People are always telling me I look like James Franco, so I decided to just cut my hair, put on a blue suit with a purple shirt, and I went as Dave Skylark, his character from The Interview, and just do the James Franco face. And people got it. And of course, that led to me getting some involvement with Club Cosplay. And I would just had this tradition of the night before, I would come up with a costume, literally in 10 minutes after raiding Goodwill for with $20, and just come up with these last-minute costumes. And somehow, it was a hit every single time. I would do Ernest from the Disney movies. I did Bill Nye the Science Guy literally 10 minutes before I left one. But the one that really sunk it in was my Weird Al costume, which people describe as scary accurate because I'm the world's biggest Weird Al fan. It was literally a wig and glasses and a Hawaiian shirt. That's really all it took. And so, I continue on doing costumes from there, but it's something that I accidentally stumbled into, and I put no effort into my costumes whatsoever. I don't do makeup. I don't sew. I don't do things on a big budget. I literally take 3 things and make a costume out of it, and somehow it works every time.
Yeah, so you don't really look forward to cosplaying anything. It's more last minute, spur of the moment,
Last minute, spur of the moment. I never put a lot of effort into it. Sometimes I put so little effort into my costumes, I don't like wearing them more than once.
I don't mean to break in, but I get the impression that it's really your selection approach that seems to be part of the secret to why it's such a big hit. It's these obscure characters that people respond to so much.
I try to think of characters that nobody has really done because, sure you can do a Spider-Man costume or a Deadpool costume, but it's you're going to get buried in the mix, and it's not really going to stand out. I like to be the guy that stands out. And the thing is, I don't do this for money or fame. I do this to have fun and make people laugh. So that's why I like being these dorky characters. And, recently I was in this short film where they asked me to be Reverse Flash. And it was my first time actually doing, a supervillain instead of a giant dork. And, that was a different thing. But they said I actually did a really good performance because I do like to make it a performance. I like to act the character, and it just I just put on the disguise, and so I get so into the character that people don't even realize it's me. People I've known forever, and they're like, "Oh, it's you."
Is there any cosplays do you plan on doing, and do you plan on doing one at Comic Fest?
I may bust something out at San Diego Comic Fest, and one of the recent ones I debuted is I decided, well, my biggest thing there is every time I do a costume, my mom always says that's the stupidest thing you've ever done in your life, which I very much agree. But she is also a huge Jeff Goldblum fan, and her favorite film is Life Aquatic, and everyone keeps telling me I have a strange resemblance to Jeff Goldblum, so I decided to dress up as Jeff Goldblum's character from Life Aquatic, Alistair Hennessy, who is just, he's the biggest douchebag on earth, and he's just a complete jerk, and so I just, like, white lab coat, slick my hair back, pink sweater, and just, like, dressed in all white, and surprised her with it. And she just thought it was the funniest thing ever. She just loved the character. And then the pictures online, just everyone said, Matt, you have to do a Life Aquatic group. You have to do a Life Aquatic group. And so I am actually putting together a Life Aquatic group it's going to be the Sunday of WonderCon of this year. So that'll be pretty fun. And I don't really have any other ideas yet, but it'll be very lazy and very last minute when I do.
Seems like that plan seems to work out for you. Yeah. So can't wait to see what you got for store for Comic Fest. You mentioned Little Fish Comic Book Studio. Can you tell us more how your involvement?
Yes, Little Fish Comic Book Studio. So pretty much like when I got my start in comics after graduating from school, I started working at a local comic book publisher called Symantec Publishing, and after a little while, they went defunct, but that's pretty much where I got my start as an editor of comics, learning to edit material, making sure things hit deadlines, how to improve artwork, storytelling, and that sort of thing. So I got my start there, and after Symantec went defunct, like I'm bouncing around, it's like, now what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And then suddenly I just stumbled upon a couple of friends of mine. Names were Chris and Shane Houghton. They were working on the Adventure Time comic at the time. They invited me to watch a podcast that they were involved in, so I'll watch it. And they were invited there by some guys who ran a comic book here in San Diego called Little Fish Comic Book Studio. And I'm like, what? How have I not heard of this before? And so I go in, and I literally just barge down the door, and I'm like, how did I not know about you guys, and how long have you been here? So I got involved with Little Fish Comic Book Studio, which is run by Alonso Nunez, who is a graduate of the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan. He studied under comic book legends such as Klaus Janson, Phil Jimenez, and David Mazzucchelli, just to name a few, prolifically working as an inker. But when he wanted to become a comic professional, he moved all the way from San Diego to Jersey to like the Joe Kubert School of Art, and then eventually to SVA. And really, there's nothing on the West Coast for learning comic art education except like CalArts, but not a lot of people have $100,000 to fork over for an animation degree. And so he started Little Fish as a cheaper and more accessible way of doing comic art education, teaching people comic storytelling, comic art, and it's so wonderful because you just get a wide range of students. Sometimes you have people who want to draw superheroes. Sometimes you have students who want to draw manga. Sometimes they want to draw webcomics. Sometimes they just want to do like cover art, pinup stuff. And it's great to help these students grow and to help this, to help the system evolve. It's now entering in its 4th year. It used to be in a smaller location over in Ocean Beach, but over the summer it moved over to a much bigger location over in the college area by 70th Street. And it's wonderful. And I love getting involved with it because I saw so much potential for it. I would start working with the students there, helping them to improve their art. And they had a small library of comic stuff, but I would start bringing in like stacks and stacks and stacks of books to help fill the library, to make sure that they had variety of material. If it was this like art collections, comic history, and so pretty much now it's just even just like libraries like this. I think we're a little more well equipped over at Little Fish, and as impressive as this area is, and I just loved working with the students. I loved getting their material out there, and I started helping to host community events. We would hold up just like comic geek meetups, and I helped start up an initiative of cosplay figure drawing, so as a way to teach the aspiring art students, but also give back to the local costumers. So we just got back from one last night, and we had some great results seeing what these students can draw, and the costumers just love it, and it's great. And eventually, after I helped out along there, I was asked to be president by Alonso Nunez, and I've been there since, and it's just been great.
Yeah, it looks like you've been involved with San Diego Comic Fest for a few years now.
Yes, I help facilitate them getting involved with San Diego Comic Fest now that Comic Fest is entering its 5th year, because I thought why not do some art education stuff to learn to expose some of the people there who are present at Comic Fest to Little Fish, so they can get a sample, try it before you buy it, and get some art education in there.
Cool. I guess that'd be a good segue to get into San Diego Comic Fest. This year, you'll be celebrating Jack Kirby's 100th birthday. We got the X-Men, the animated series, 25-year tribute. We're celebrating 25 years of Image Comics with the guest of honor, Jim Valentino. And you have some awesome guests lined up, like Stan Sakai, creator of Usagi Yojimbo. Got Floyd Norman, Disney legend, animator, writer, comics creator. And I'm even just interested in meeting Rob Salkowitz. I listened to the audio book version of his book, Comic-Con and the Business of Pop Culture. And you even have Lee Cozy live painting, which we met him at a recent Thumbprint Gallery. Was it for Star Wars, right?
Star Wars.
Yeah, for Star Wars. Even have an X-Men mock trial on mutant rights, which I find pretty interesting. And to top it all off, you have these pretty interesting cocktails that you'll be, showcasing.
I'm looking forward to trying out those cocktails.
Oh yeah, those are actually prepared by Alonzo Nunez, the head of Little Fish. He actually has, in his free time, when he's not drawing comics and teaching comics, he actually has been experimenting with some Prohibition-era cocktails. And so he's actually, gotten up a good bartender repertoire, and so he decided to come up with these Jack Kirby-themed cocktails, and I got to say they're actually pretty good. Especially the Dark Side is my personal favorite. So yeah, and it's blue and purple, so it really works, and you feel like taking over the universe after you've had a couple. But now that San Diego Comic Fest, for those who don't know about it, it is now entering its 5th year. It was started by Mike Towery and Richard Alf, who were the guys who founded San Diego Comic-Con way back in 1969. Mike was just there with a group of friends, just hanging out in their mom's basement, like reading comics and stuff. And they're saying wouldn't it be great if we could meet comic people other than ourselves? What if we were to put together an event where we could meet other comic nerds? And they said, yeah, that's a great idea. And so they went to the local magazine retailer, a guy named Richard Alf. He was the guy they'd get their comics from. And they said, would you help us put together this event? And he says, that's a great idea. But we'd probably need someone to try to bring in other people. And he's like, I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who knows Jack Kirby. So they reached out to the guy who knows Jack Kirby. And then Jack invited him up to their place in Thousand Oaks. And he gladly accepted the offer to be the guest of honor at that first San Diego Comic-Con. And back then it was known as California's Golden State Comic Convention because San Diego wasn't a readily known city. And Jack, also told them, it's you should actually get up, you should have some, film guests and science fiction guests. And then he, rang up, Ray Bradbury to be, the science fiction guest of honor. And at that first comic convention in 1969, they attracted about 200 people, 250 people, give or take. The next year, at the 1971, they attracted about 500. And Jack said, no, look at this. Look at how great this is. It has become so big. It's already doubled in size. This is the best thing in the whole world. Someday it'll be so big it'll take over the entire town. It'll be the place where Hollywood shows off the things they made last year and tries to find the stuff they're going to make next year. Just you wait and see. And everyone just laughed at Jack, sure. But of course, he was the Nostradamus of comics, and he was right. And as much as I love San Diego Comic-Con, nowadays you've got 500 people in line in front of you at the ATM. When you have some 200,000 people at an event, it does tend to get overwhelming for people who don't know how to deal with it. I mean, I've been doing it since 1994, so I know how to deal with it. But sometimes it's just nice to, break away and do something smaller and a little more focused, something that's not so overwhelming, not so tough on the budget. So enter San Diego Comic Fest. And now Mike and Richard, sadly Richard is no longer with us these days, but they started this up a couple years ago. The first 2 years I attended, and they were nice. It was a little on, getting its footing. They had guest of honor as Murphy Anderson for Artists of Justice League there, and it was off to a good start. And they, but by third year, it's okay, it's picking up a little more. But last year was the year where San Diego Comic Fest finally became the convention that it needed to be. And they brought me on board as chairman after my contributions to the last couple of fests, because they were kind of at I would call it a crucial juncture, one of those make or break, but it really paid off, and it just became this incredibly fun event. It's focused on...
What do you mean last year it became the con it needed to be? Can you explain?
the thing there is some of the times of conventions, you go to a convention and it's like, there's too many things to do. There's too many things to do. Last year at San Diego Comic Fest, it achieved the mission that we had been starting, that it was the small, intimate convention, but it provided with so many opportunities and so many great things to do. The biggest problem was there's too many good things to do at the same time, and you just can't do them all. That's a pretty good problem to have. And it's just so nice to just meet these legendary creators, just hang out with them in a small, intimate setting, because sometimes when you go to these bigger cons, the only opportunity is to go up to these creators and talk to them on a mic, and it's like, hi, I really like your work, and that's a little much. I mean, I'm guilty of that myself. But to talk with them in a relaxed setting where everything is just so chill and so nice, it's great, it's wonderful. It literally was like the Comic Cons back to the 1970s, where it was that small, intimate environment, but there's still so many cool things to do.
How's attendance grown for for Comic Fest?
Attendance has really grown for Comic Fest too. Of course, it's decent size, but it's not too big. And just checked out the venue today, the 4 Points Hotel off of Arrow Drive. It's a really nice venue. It's really great, and certainly we have outgrown the previous venue at the Town and Country Hotel, which is a good sign. We're thankful for our years there to help us grow, but now we've outgrown our little kid shoes and we're putting on the big boy boots. And really, as things are continuing to grow, it's going to be great. And I'm really happy with the guests that we've brought on board this year. And like you mentioned earlier, we're celebrating 25 years of Image Comics with Image co-founder Jim Valentino coming to join us again for the event. And then we are also celebrating the 25th anniversary of the X-Men cartoon. And if you guys are like me, you grew up with that cartoon as well, and you know how amazing it is. So I'm pretty giddy with joy for that.
Yeah, that is one of the highlights. That's going to be one of the highlights. You guys scored some amazing guests from the original production team.
Yeah, and I'm happy that we're also getting so many repeat offenders to our convention coming back as well. Like we'll be joined again by Liam Sharp. Liam was great last year, just teaching some comic art education lectures, and now he's after he's made the formal announcement that he's on Wonder Woman, he's been doing the best work of his career, and just so hanging out with Liam, he's always just a wonderful guy to see. And now that his company Madefire is blowing up after getting investments from Kevin Spacey and Drake of all people into the newfound motion comic business that he's doing, I think it's just absolutely wonderful what he's doing. And we're also happy to have Disney legend Floyd Norman back again. Floyd, who spent the better part of a decade working with Walt Disney. He was the first black animator at Disney Studios starting in 1956 on Sleeping Beauty. And working with Walt Disney up until the last project that he did before he passed away in 1966, which was The Jungle Book. But subsequently, Floyd still works on Disney projects and storyboarding or some capacity for it, and is still active, and he's just such a wonderful, nice guy, and we're happy to have him back again. And let's see, other guests that we have on board. Because we are focusing on the Jack Kirby Centennial, we do have a lot of Jack Kirby guests coming on board.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you're celebrating that?
Okay, so we're going to be celebrating Jack Kirby's centennial in a number of ways. We've brought in several comic book historians to speak about their time with Jack. Mark Evanier and Steve Sherman, who kind of got their starts working with Jack as his assistant before going on to bigger and better things, will be coming in for the Kirby Centennial to talk about their experience working with Jack. And then we also have comic historian Arlen Schumer has made a recent announcement that he is going to be coming in and providing a visual lecture on the Silver Age art of Jack Kirby, and just going beyond and going throughout the, encompass the entirety of his career. We also are bringing back Mike Royer, who served as Jack Kirby's inker during the 1970s, primarily on projects like The Fourth World, the Eternals, and Devil Dinosaurs, so that iconic 1970s Jack Kirby stuff. Mike will be here talking about his experience working with Jack. He's always the life of the party. He was great to hang out with last year. And so we will be celebrating Kirby in every capacity that we can, and just giving a lot of attention to his history, to his work, and just celebrating it, because not every year you get to celebrate Jack turning 100.
Indeed. Boy, the lineup of guests is so amazing, but I'd like to just briefly go back to that the X-Men spotlight for the X-Men the Animated Series. You've got the producer, Larry Houston, and several writers, and you guys have multiple things that you're going to be doing with them. Can you just briefly touch upon the Saturday's panel event with them, and then some screenings on Sunday, I believe?
Oh, yes. So we're going to be just reviewing the past of the X-Men cartoon, the creation, the establishment into it. And the truth is, I've actually got some questions on it myself because, I've always had this curiosity about myself because before the X-Men cartoon came out, there was a VHS preview of an X-Men cartoon, but they were a little more John Byrne style, and then they came out with that awesome X-Men arcade game. But ultimately, it was sort of like in a G.I. Joe animation style, and it was really cool. It was like the coolest thing, aside from the Australian voice Wolverine, but who ended up being played by an Australian later, I might add.
The irony.
Oh, the irony.
I can tell you a little bit about that. You're talking about Pride of the X-Men.
Pride of the
a
X-Men.
pilot show that Marvel had tried to, when they got their cartoons going in the early 80s, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends and the Incredible Hulk cartoon, which are two actually really good, solid adaptations for that era. They expanded into other shows like G.I. Joe and Transformers, and so they had a syndication deal for their stuff. RoboCop, the cartoon, was part of it, and so they couldn't get any more of their superheroes adapted. They couldn't make those deals close. They finally did get a pilot for a proposed X-Men series. It was late 80s. It was well before the 92 series, though. Though I suppose it's possible some of the same people worked on it, but unfortunately it never took off because it had some really good animation.
It really does. I really enjoyed it.
I remember. How many years did you have my VHS tapes of the X-Men animated series?
I probably still do have them. Are you talking about those Pizza Hut giveaway tapes?
Yeah. I remember those. They had the coolest box art, too.
They did, though. I was so angry when I got one because they recorded it on EP. It's only one episode, and they still couldn't spend the 5 cents extra to record it on SP, the higher quality. So those tapes degraded in quality literally every time you watched them, which I thought was really unfortunate. But you're right, the box art was fantastic.
That was fantastic. I still remember picking mine up and just watching it until it broke. So yeah, I guess that goes into the history there. And aside from the X-Men animation panels, we are bringing in we're having a mock trial. We did one last year, the trial of the Winter Soldier, to decide, is the Winter Soldier liable for his actions, or can he be declared criminally insane? But this year, we are going to be addressing, are the Sentinels constitutional? Is it legal to attack a mutant threat before it attacks you? And these mock trials are really well done because we do actually bring in legal professionals, real judges, and a team of jurors to debate, and we even bring in court stenographers, court artists. We try to recreate the trial scene as best as possible. It's ridiculously entertaining as you see these lawyers bickering among themselves for the legal rights of it. They are people who really know their stuff.
It's such a meta experience the fans are going to have for that. I love it. It reminded me of, if you guys remember when the first X-Men movie came out, and what a brilliant marketing campaign they had. You could sign up to join the fight against mutants, the anti-mutant group, and they actually had grassroots protests where people would be, show up in big cities like outside the Capitol and have, anti-mutant, picket signs and everything. I mean, I love seeing, this art that we love so much break over into the real world. It's really special.
That it is, and it's just so wonderful that that legal professionals are actually just becoming involved with it too. And so I'm happy that they're taking the time to join us on this, and it's really awesome, and I'm really happy and really looking forward to it. We have so much great programming coming out for these events, and so many wonderful professionals as well. And aside from the X-Men cartoon. comic historian Arlen Schumer is also going to be doing a visual presentation on the 25th anniversary of the Batman animated series as well, and he is going to be doing 50 years of Neil Adams, the comic professional, as well as the 100th anniversary of Kirby and the Silver Age of comic art. So pretty much, if you're really into visually descriptive presentations, I would say go to Arlen Schumer's panels as well. And the guest that I'm always happy to look forward to is John Semper, who is the creator of the Spider-Man cartoon from 1994, which is my all-time favorite cartoon. And just hearing him talk about his history as an animation writer and everything that he's done, because he became the first black showrunner back in 1981, given that job by Jim Henson. And then he talks about working with George Lucas in the 1980s and Stan Lee later on. And it's just like really, it was so surreal just like talking with him and some of my friends at Comic Fest last year, just talking with these giants. And all of a sudden Floyd Norman comes up to us and starts talking to us about his time with Walt Disney. I'm like, oh, wow. And I thought John's hung out with some giants. So, and it's just like you have these creators here like this, and it's such a wonderful, great environment. And I'm so glad that I've been a part of Comic Fest and helped it grow into what it is today.
Wow, it's just an amazing experience. It's great to hear about this, and we're looking forward to it. I love that story you mentioned about the first comic that you read and how you couldn't read it. I had a similar story, and so I just really responded to that. I remember I found a few comics laying around the house. I still to this day have never found out who in my family got them or anything. Just random 70s, Avengers and Marvel team up. And I remember just looking at that art and trying to figure out the story without being able to read it. That's fantastic. Well, anything else we should know about Comic Fest coming up?
Other things you should know about Comic Fest, if you want to get tickets, go to www.sdcomicfest.org. And the event of the date will be the 17th through the 20th. The 17th, pretty much when you're getting off work, that President's Day weekend, we will be starting a preview night party, starting from 6 to 9. We'll be sampling the Kirby cocktails, hanging out. All the creators will be there, so if you just want to meet these legendary creators, hang out in a nice party atmosphere, this will be the place to be. The main convention will start on that Saturday and progress all the way to that Monday. So fortunately, it's a 4-day weekend thanks to President's Day. We really would like to have you around for it and just come by, have a good time. Check out our con. It's really good.
Awesome. I guess it's time for the Thunder Round, our off the beaten path round of questions. I guess out of the characters you have cosplayed, which one would you want to be for real and why?
Who would I want to be for real and why? It's a tough call because I've gone off as so many different people. But if I were to be someone in real life, I would be Weird Al because he's so sexy and so wonderful, and everyone loves him everywhere he goes. And that hair, oh my God, that hair! It's just the best hair.
Yeah, I saw him at Conan Con last year, and he was a riot. Yeah, he was definitely showing a lot of love during that Conan Con.
Yeah, I'm so jealous. I've seen him in concert every year. He's come to San Diego since 1996. Never missed him once. Even left Comic-Con early this year because his concert coincided on a Comic-Con day. And I'm like, this is the biggest conflict of my entire life. But my love for Al eventually led me to leave the con an hour early so I could get to the concert.
Cool.
I gave up an hour of Comic-Con for the first time in my life for Weird Al.
While it looks like you are donating a large amount of your single-issue comic collection, you're still hanging on to, I guess, quite a few hardcovers. I hope this never happens, but, San Diego is prone to wildfires. If you had to quickly evacuate and could only carry 10 hardcovers, which ones would you choose?
All right, that's the thing, because if you see my collection at my place, I have some like 700 Absolutes Omnibus. I'm pretty big into the big $100 plus collection edition. So I collect some very rare books in my place. And I've often thought of myself like the Asterius Polyp collection. If your house was on fire, what would you grab and bolt? I know the one thing I would bolt and just take, if I had to take one, it'd be my Comic-Con 40 Years of Fans, Friends, and Artists. It's a book by Jackie Estrada. She assembled all these comic creators over the past 40 years of the first Comic-Con, collecting pictures, stories, excerpts. But the reason I would take that one is originally when I got it signed, I was just going to take it up to Sergio Aragonis to sign because he did the cover. But then Tom Luth, who did the coloring for it, is like, oh, let me sign it too. And then like Stan Sakai said, oh, let me sign on my page. And then Jeff Smith was there next one, oh, I'll do a sign too. And it just became a yearbook for me. And I take it to every single convention, and I just like, I love it because I've gotten hundreds upon hundreds of signatures in there. People just drawing all over it, drawing sketches, trying to outdo the last sketch, and like everybody has bared their mark in this book. And so it just reminds me of like all the great times at the conventions meeting these creators, and it's just like the most wonderful book. And I really like, there's so much wonderful history in it. And I think one of my favorite stories about getting an autograph in it is when I was at a Neil Gaiman signing in 2012. And I had him sign it, and he opens up the book to his. And I open up the book to his page, and it's like, oh, this is wonderful. Oh, look at me back then. Look how young I was. Oh, delightful. There's me and Frank Miller. And there's like about 400 people behind me, and everyone is like getting mad at me. We've already been in line for like 3 hours. It was the hottest day of the year, and everyone behind me is getting all mad and like, I'm not doing it. It's like, oh, look at this. Let me turn this. And he's taking his sweet time looking through his book, and it's like, oh, this is wonderful. Oh, you have this signature, and I'm like. I don't mean to rush him along, but it's like, but it was just a wonderful time. So if I did, I would probably, I would take that. I have a leather-bound Carl Barks signed Uncle Scrooge collected edition, and that's a big one. I would take that out there, but because I love Uncle Scrooge, I think he's the most interesting fictional character ever made because you can't get a bad story out of him. Every penny in that vault, he's got a story about how he obtained it, and. I think those would have to be the big ones because, there's only so many I can carry. It's probably kind of counterproductive, but maybe I would say my Amazing Spider-Man omnibus because that was the first omnibus collection I ever bought because I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, a huge Ditko fan. And, yeah, I'd be going out there like this and maybe like my Rocketeer Artist Edition just because it's, rare and so valuable. But, I think pretty much if I were just take one, it would just be the 40th anniversary one. I could get away with that because at least I would have my memories.
Sweet. Silver Surfer versus Thor. Who wins and why?
Silver Surfer versus Thor. Who wins and why? Let's think back to that nice cover by John Buscema about them going toe to toe. For me, I would have to go with Silver Surfer.
Yes.
I think he is the one who would really take it down because Thor, albeit powerful, is a little headstrong. Silver Surfer is a little more focused in his objectives, plus the power cosmic. Besides, Thor may be a god, but power cosmic, makes you a god. So.
For sure.
Norn would do anything to get to his gal.
I agree.
He'll do it. He'll survive for it.
The West Coast Avengers are relocating to San Diego, and they tap you to build a roster. Who do you pick for the new team?
West Coast Avengers roster.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see a little bit of versatility into it, but I do really want to see. I would like to take it back at I would want to think. I would make it as 80s as possible or something. I would think, why don't we get Beast? Why don't we get Wonder Man, Machine Man? We could get Doctor Strange, but when he had the full blue costume, I don't want them wearing their normal costumes for it, and but I want them just really in it. And let's get Grey Hulk, Mr. Fix-It Hulk, because I don't want them being their normal selves. I want them not looking like themselves in there. And let's bring in Scarlet Spider. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, Scarlet Spider. Oh yeah, it just
Ben Reilly.
Yeah, Ben Reilly. Yeah, who I'm a big fan of as well. But when I think of West Coast Avengers, I just don't think of usual Avengers. I think of just the weirdest, most out there costumes, just making something like that. So I think that kind of roster would be the one I go for.
Nice.
Yeah, I'd like to see that one too. It looks like you enjoy your beer. If you could have a few beers with anyone dead, alive, or even fictional, who would it be and what kind of beers would you have?
I know it's a little too late, but I would like to grab a beer with Wally Wood. A lot of people say that, he always had to go through life as the second best comic artist of all time. But for me, I think he really was the greatest comic artist of all time because he could adhere to any single style, no matter what. if it was superheroes, if it was Disney characters, if it was Goofy, if it was like horror, he could do it. He just like I don't think I've ever seen a bad page by Wally Wood, and he had such a tragic life, like just basically like literally working himself into his untimely suicide. But that man had so many stories and so many just great abilities. He would be the kind of guy I would love to grab a beer with, even though he probably would just be making fun of me the entire time. That'd be awesome. I would like to grab a beer with Steve Ditko. I'm not sure what we would talk about or how long our conversation would last, but he's always one of those guys I've really wanted to meet, and that's just wonderful for me. So I'd probably say like Ditko and Wally Wood.
Do you think Ditko drinks beer?
He actually, there is a story of him. He actually appeared at a place and actually was drinking. Actually, did have a beer once, and something.
Really?
Actually, there are actually pictures of Steve Ditko at an event. He actually, I think it was like a college graduation for like a granddaughter or something, and he actually was there. He actually said that the beer was good, though he later learned that someone was taking his pictures, and he did not like that.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's
Well, being here in San Diego, we have a ton of breweries to pick from. Which ones would you want to go to with them?
Favorite as of lately, I really like Rip Current Brewery over on 30th Street in North Park. They're really good because I know we're a IPA-focused town, and some people say, oh, there's no such thing as a good lager. Go to Rip Current. Trust me, they make a good lager. Sometimes if you want the hoppiness away, you just want something a little smoother, yeah, try Rip Current. They're very good. Also, I live on Adams Avenue, so like I've got Blind Lady Ale House just around the corner from me, so that place is always great to grab a brew. And then right around the corner from here, the gallery. We are so fortunate to have Stone Brewing and this and Pizza Port and so many other great places. But yeah, it's just hard to narrow it down when you've got all this great stuff around you.
Yeah, for sure. If a movie was made about you, what kind of music would be on the soundtrack?
Gangster rap.
Anyone in particular?
And Weird Al. And I'd probably be played by James Franco. I'd have my dad played by Jeff Goldblum. Yeah, that's like, and just try to I would want to have the actors of characters that I've portrayed in my own costumes, just as playing as characters in my life.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Weird Al song?
What's my favorite Weird Al song? I'd have to go with White and Nerdy, which is one I've actually gotten to perform at Club Cosplay. First of my class here at MIT, got skills, I'm a champion, D&D. MC Esther is my favorite MC. Keep your 40, I'll just have an Earl Grey tea. My rims never spin to the contrary. You'll find they're quite stationary. All of my action figures are cherry. Stephen Hawking's in my library. My MySpace page all totally pimped out. Got people begging my top 8 spaces. You on a pie with 1,000 blazes. Ain't got no grill, but I still wear braces. I order all of my sandwiches and mayonnaise. I'm a wizard mind, so I can play for days. When you see my sweet moves, gonna stay amazed. Fingers move so fast as a blaze of blaze. Ain't no kill if I haven't run. At Pascal, we're number 1. Do a bunch of gackets just for fun. Ain't got a gap, but I got a soldering gun. Happy Days, my favorite theme song. Sugar button, a game of ping pong. Ace in trivia quiz you bring on. Fluent JavaScript as well as Klingon.
Oh, nice. That was cool.
not his first time doing that. I don't think.
What do you think 85-year-old Matt would tell the current you?
I'm 85 for a moment. And stop singing that Five for Fighting variation. I would say to me is, why did you spend so much time playing Pokemon and not enough time reading comic books? Look at the giant dork you've grown up to.
When you become famous, or I guess infamous, how would you like your Wikipedia page to read?
Inaccurate and full of fake news.
What's one thing our audience would be surprised to know about you?
I'm half black.
What's one thing your mom would be surprised to know about you?
How did my son come out looking white? No one believes I'm half black until they meet my mom.
I was waiting to see if he was joking. I couldn't tell.
All right, Alex.
Let's see. How long's your tenure as the chairman for San Diego Comic Fest? And how do you envision the next 5 years?
Well, as taking the convention forward, I definitely would like to expand on a guest lineup. I was already thinking of guests and am already in talks with some for next year. we're going to have a much bigger lineup of guests this year, and this is definitely going to reflect things because mainly what I want to do for Comic Fest is keep true to an audience and of attendees that want to come for like Comic Cons of the past. So I'm going to be inviting characters that I'm going to invite guests that have established histories, creating characters in the comic industry, but are still working on new stuff. So that's just kind of the thing. It's just like we have something for the older crowd, something for the newer crowd, and so you have to take an advantage. There's sometimes there's people who just don't read comics anymore, but they like coming to conventions and seeing like, oh, I like remembering this and remembering that, and so for that I do like to bring in creators that can help them bring back a little of the past, while for the newer crowd they can still look forward to some of their projects that they're going to be making in the future. Definitely focusing more towards a comic educational side of things, comic history, preserving history, showcasing new stuff, and just growing with the convention in a manageable way, because I want us to get bigger, but like not too big. You know how it is. Because we still like this small, intimate thing, and I don't want us to lose track of that.
That's very nice to hear. So what does the rest of 2017 look like for you? What other convention events do you plan on going to?
What other events do I plan on going to? Well, of course, we have San Diego Comic Fest coming up in 2 weeks on the 17th or the 20th, obviously. And then at the end of the month, I will be traveling to Emerald City Comic Con for my first time up there. I've never been to that con, but I just got approved for a Pro Pass. So I will be attending that event for the first time. Looking forward to seeing a lot of my friends in the Northwest. And then I will be attending WonderCon this April. And even before then, in March, I will be co-hosting Poke Oasis. It's a Pokemon fan event that will be going on. I hosted it last year, and I had a whole lot of fun. And as the events go forward, I definitely will be attending San Diego Comic-Con again for my 23rd year in a row.
Wow.
And I just got back from Anime Los Angeles last week. That was a whole lot of fun. And for me, it's like I hit up a con every 2 seconds. It's hard for me to not be at conventions because I love them so much.
Do you have any projects in the pipeline that you could talk about?
No comment. I mean, I can talk about them, but then a non-disclosure agreement would kick in. So I'll keep my lips tight right now.
Okay.
This is the one question I have to plead the fifth on.
Suddenly the recorder would stop recording.
Especially in this building.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you certainly baited our curiosity, sir.
Yeah, let's go to Snowden for a little bit after the podcast.
Yeah, right. Lubricate them up and see if we can get it out of them.
Well, we want to thank Matt for being on the show, and we look forward to attending San Diego Comic Fest this year. Is there anything that we forgot to mention about San Diego Comic Fest that you'd like to tell our audience?
It's fun, and we talk about comic books.
Where can people find you online?
You can find me online at myspace.com/Matt Dunford. You can add me there, and I'll give you a thanks for the ad, and I'll put you in my top 8 if you're good. But yeah, but no, just find me at facebook.com/Matt Dunford, DUNFORD. Also look for me on Instagram at Matt Dunford, MATTDUNFORD, and yeah, you can find me there. I have Twitter as well. I don't really use it as often because it's like Twitter's for important people with a following, and I'm not important.
Yet.
You're important to us, Matt.
Okay.
Sweet.
Thanks. Aw.
All right, guys, that's the Hall 8 show, and we'll see you next time. Peace, cheers, and get your SDCC Fit workout in.
Okay.
Later.
Thank you.
What an awesome show. We definitely have to have Matt on again. We also want to give a huge shout out to San Diego Comic Art Gallery manager TJ Shevlin for letting us record the podcast there. If you ever are in San Diego, please go check out the gallery in Liberty Station. If you have any suggestions for potential guests, please let us know through social media using the hashtag HallHShow. Peace, cheers, and say hi to us if you see us at San Diego Comic Fest. We would love to meet you.